Welcome back to our series on how to play the real book. Today, we're going to dive into our level 2 arrangement of Someday My Prince Will Come. But before we do so, go ahead and take a quick listen to all 4 levels back to back. And to find out how to get access to these arrangements, stick around to the end of the video. If you're new to mDecksMusic, we create music books and apps, piano arrangements, and we discuss improvisation, songwriting, and sometimes we take music theory to strange and uncharted places. So subscribe and hit the bell, and join us for exclusive access to our ever-expanding library of music resources. All right, so let's dive into level 2. You're going to see us implement a lot of the same things we just talked about in level 1. And just sort of like build on them or expand. We're going to be playing the chords and the melody pretty much as is. We'll have a lot of closed voicings on the left hand with some inversions and some rootless voicings. And we're starting with, we're considering the 7 chords as sort of like our default setting. That is to say, if we do add a tension, it's in addition to our default setting of we're using primarily 7 chords. And one more thing you're going to see is an increase in the grid complexity. Let's just go ahead and play the first phrase, and we'll start with that. All right, so right off the bat, you can hear one of the biggest departures from level 1, and that's the increase in that rhythmic grid complexity to more of a quarter note, half note, or just straight quarter note pulse constantly there. And we've achieved that by way of just kind of breaking the chords on the left hand. So this not only fills in the gaps a lot of the time where the melody was just not playing onto and gives us some more like continuous pulse, it also gives us a way, a more clearly defined bass line as well as a consequence of that. Next thing we should probably talk about is what's going on in measures 4, 5, and 6 and our implementation of rootless voicings. I say rootless in air quotes here because in measure 4, we've omitted the root on the left-hand voicing. If you remember in version 1, we actually had the G involved in the left-hand voicing. Here, it is absent from the left-hand voicing, but it's present in the melody. So while the voicing on the left hand technically is rootless, it doesn't have the G present, it's still going to land to the ear as if, you know, this G is there. Whether your perspective of this being a rootless voicing or not is yay or nay, ultimately that, you know, is sort of irrelevant. What matters here is the idea that, well, the root doesn't always have to be there, and if it's considered by the right hand, then maybe you want to like reinterpret how you voice the chord on your left. There's no sense in really doubling the G. Again, reinforcing that idea that we talked about in level 1, that the real sheet provides you with the basics, but a lot of the context is either missing or implied. And you can see this further in the next 2 measures, 5 and 6. All right, so here we have, I guess, a more literal interpretation of what a rootless voicing is. In this C minor 7 in measure 5, we've replaced the root with the 9th, so introducing a tension there. And then in this G7 sharp 5 in measure 6, we've completely gotten rid of the root there as well. All right, let's jump into our next 8 measure phrase. All right, right, so one of the most obvious things that's going on there is we're kind of omitting the left hand on the downbeat of each measure. We're letting sort of the right hand take control over illustrating where the beat is as it relates to the grid. And again, this speaks to us kind of making the rhythmic grid more defined. And there's more than one way to do that. And here we're achieving that by, just resting on the downbeat with the left hand, having the left hand fill in the blanks, if you will, that the right hand is not playing rhythmically. And then what you have here is a clearly defined 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 grid, like we talked about. All right, let's listen to the end of that phrase one more time so we can talk about what the right hand is doing in measures 16 through 18. So what's going on here on the right hand is we're introducing for the first time, well, there's a few things. One of the things is we're introducing for the first time the right hand as an idea, filling in the spaces of our rhythmic grid. You can see that quite clearly here in measure 16, where there's nothing on 2 and 3 as written, and we're using the right hand to sort of fill in that hole, if you will. And in measure 17, we're doing the same thing. Again, we're implementing harmony into the right hand, but this time in a more layered sort of approach. We have the melody note, which is also a chord tone, landing on 1, and then on 2, the rest of the notes in the chord, or more notes in the chord landing there. So you have this, again, this layered effect by implementing this harmony in this way. And then in measure 18, another use of harmony with the C on the third beat, harmonizing the melody with a chord tone. So here you have 3 very distinctly different ways of having the right hand take on another role other than just playing the melody. All right, let's continue on. We'll listen to this next section again to talk about rhythmic displacement. So right there, you will notice the different ways we implemented rhythmic displacement on the melody. The first place it happens is here, measure 19. There's that dotted rhythm we used in level 1. Again, displacing this G that was on 3 onto the end of 2 and sort of anticipating that note, or that melody note. And you fast forward to measures 22 and 23, you see more implementation of this rhythmic displacement. The E flat, that was on 1 in our original arrangement, is now on 2, displaced over to 2. Same thing with this C over here in measure 23, that was on 3, it's now displaced over to the and of 2. A couple of other things that you might have noticed that are going on in measure 23 is our use of the grace notes here, and this B is not originally in the melody. What we're doing here is introducing this B as a chromatic approach to the C that follows it in the next measure. All right, so there we have it, a nice, tasteful evolution of our melody. Now let's dive into our last section here, because there's a lot of stuff going on here that we can talk about. First, let's listen to it. I'll just let it play some more. All right, so let's start with measures 25 and 26. What's simply going on here is some broken chords. Again, to reinforce that idea of a more complicated rhythmic grid. So F minor 7, broken up, boom, 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 1, 2, 3. Sort of the same thing going on here on this B flat 7. Only the broken chord, I want you to see it like this. The broken chord is on beats 2 and 3. What we've added is an extra layer of bass on the downbeat. So we have this B flat and then our broken chord. You also may have noticed in measure 27 a slight departure from the melody, and not by way of displacement or anything like that. Just this time, just clear omission. We've just like left out this C melody note. So instead of going back and forth between C, B flat, and C, we're just climbing up from B flat here. In in these last few measures here, you see us really leaning into that formerly mentioned idea of using the right hand to flesh out the harmony, or harmonizing the melody with two or more notes, or even sometimes maybe in one note if you want to, from the chord represented in that measure. And that's exactly what you see here going on in measures 28, 29, 30, and 31. The melody's on top, and underneath it, we're harmonizing it, still using the right hand, using other notes in the chord. This is a really effective way to harmonize your melody. Sometimes those notes can even just be static, and like we said, it can be one note from the chord. Here we're using two, but feel free to explore this idea moving forward when you're looking at lead sheets. Harmonizing the melody using your right hand. And of course, at the end here in this last measure, you see the implementation of a tension 9 used on this major 7 chord, like you saw with our Rootless Voicings. And again, we have a whole course on Rootless Voicings, how to use them, so check that out. But using tension 9 on major 7 chords is a really effective way to introduce attention to a voicing, even if it's not explicitly said so in the chart. All right, so now that we've talked about all of the elements in the piece, let's go back to the beginning and listen through it straight through. Be on the lookout for all of the techniques that we talked about. Thanks again for watching. Join us next time when we dive into level 3. If you want access to all of these arrangements, go ahead and become a member. You can do so by clicking on the join button or the link down below. Also, check out this video here for more awesome music theory related content. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.